There are lots of ways of multiplying two numbers, and this video is going to explain the grid method. We're going to start by trying to do a nice straightforward multiplication. 32 by 45. And the very first thing we're going to do is draw a grid. So, our grid needs to have space for 2 bits at the top and 2 bits down the side. I know it's a 3 by 3 grid I'm drawing, but you'll see why in a minute. So this is a multiplication grid, and it's going to have 30 and 2 at the top, and 40 and 5 down the side. And this is one of the reasons that the grid method is a popular teaching method, because it shows people what the numbers are made up of, the tens and the units. It's good for reinforcing and understanding place value. It's also quite useful later on when you're teaching certain algebraic multiplication. So once you've got your grid, you fill it in. So this square here, we're going to have 30 times 40, so you would look at it as 3 times 4, which is 12, and then you pop your zeros on the end. 40 times 2 is 80. 5 times 30, well, you do 3 times 5, which is 15, and stick a 0 on the end. And then finally you'd have 5 times 2, which is 10. A common mistake is for people to make their grid too small and then they run out of room. Now, once you've got the grid filled in, all you have to do is add that lot up. And again, to avoid mistakes, it's a good idea to use the column approach to adding. I've got squares on my page here, so I'm just going to lay it out with everything in the right column. So first of all, I've got my 1,200, and then I'm going to put my 150 with the hundreds lined up, and then I'm going to put my 80 with the 8 lined up in the tens column, and finally the 10 at the end, and I'm going to add that lot up to get my answer. So I've got 0 there, 5, 8 make 13, with the 1 makes 14, so that's 4, and carry the 1 along, and then we've got 2, 3, 4, and finally we've got the 1 in the thousands. So the answer to this is 1,440. Now, I know it's not as quick and efficient as some of the other methods, but it's a very clear way, and it's very easy to understand exactly what's going on. It's also very hard to forget anything, because you can see very clearly that when you multiply 32 by 45, there are 4 components to your answer that have to be collected together. Finally, it's quite useful to, you can use this to do decimals. The way I would use it to do decimals, for example, if I was going to multiply 3.2 by 4.5, I would consider them as both being 10 times bigger, and do 32 times 45, which tells me that the answer has these digits in it. And then finally, I would consider the numbers after the decimal point here. There are 2 of them. That means there have to be 2 over here, and that tells me where the decimal point goes. So it's 14.40. If you were doing, say, a bigger number, for example, you were doing 32 times 154, you would just need a bigger grid. So your grid would have to have space for the 100 and 50 and the 4, and then 30 and the 2, and it doesn't matter whether you put the numbers down the side or along the top, as long as the bit on the top makes one number and the bit on the side makes the other. So that's the grid method. It's not the greatest method, it's not the only method, but it's a good method, it works, and to be quite honest, you don't really need a non-calculator multiplying method for big numbers very often. It's a bit of a set piece thing, so if you can do this, then this is good enough to get by. Bigger numbers than this, and you take out your mobile phone and use the calculator on it.